pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we know off the top of our heads who's up for invocation this time around? No? Does anybody want to volunteer? I'm looking at you, Tom. Invocation? Yeah.
Okay. Dear Lord, we come before you today to ask for your blessing upon this meeting. That we recognize that in all of our money it says, "In God we trust." And we take this very seriously. And we ask you to be with us now and cause us to make decisions that will, dear Lord, please forgive my phone, help us make decisions that will benefit all the waterways of St. Augustine, St. Johns County. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. Roll call?
You just hear that echo out there?
Yeah, it's broadcasting out there right now for some reason.
Max fixed that. Tom?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Linda? Here. Okay, here.
Next up is adoption and approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any modifications or comments on the agenda as written? No? Do I have a motion to approve?
Approve the agenda.
There's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment.
Linda Ginn, Friends of Summerhaven River, 9051 Gene Johnson Road. As promised, I said I would come and let you know about the Intera engineering study for Summerhaven. The study that has been released is a draft, and it's about 368 pages, and the county sent it back to the engineering company for revision. It's too long and too complicated from what I've been told. So it's going back for refinement. Even when they send out the second study report, revised study, it will also be in draft format because there's more public input to be given before the report is finalized. One of the things that I wanted to let you know is, and I don't know that this will change in any revisions in the future, but the Friends have a major concern about the report, and that is there's a statement, there's a chart in there, and one of the options is taking no action at Summerhaven, and they're saying that that costs $0. And I wanted to let you know that there are a number of things that we have concerns about with this. First, I don't know what the price is of recreation provided by a 2-mile river. I don't know what the loss of a 22-acre public park with a boat launch and access to Matanzas Inlet costs. The environment, including but not limited to wetland and wildlife habitat, easy access to the river for a living outdoor classroom, and property values and property protection declines for most of Summerhaven as the ocean comes in and the river goes away. And finally, we are concerned about water quality. And I'm just going to quote here from the study. A retired Whitney Laboratory research scientist and aquatic biologist noted in public comments on this study a dramatic decline in the health of the surrounding estuary resulting from the reduced flushing and decreased salinity. Observations included decline in oyster beds near Marineland and Pellisier Creek, and biological diversity, including commercially harvested species, leading to loss of ecosystem services. And this is something, that's the end of the quote. But since that time, Jose Nunez, who has studied the area more than anyone we know for over 2 decades, even longer than the Friends have been working on the river, he has expressed additional concern that with the increased construction in the Pellisier Creek and Princess Place area, and without an open river for direct transport, Pellisier Creek could potentially be subject to serious algae blooms, and who knows how many millions of dollars that would cost. So I just wanted to let you know what our concerns were, because these things were not included in the study. And it can't be a zero cost value for all those things. It's just not possible. So anyhow, any questions?
Will there be another public workshop?
Yes.
Any idea when it would be?
No, because they took this report back and are working on it still.
So and on this second study, when they solicit more public input, you'll, I'm assuming, be raising these issues and these concerns?
Yes, of course.
I had a question, kind of a little bit unrelated, and you may or may not know the answer, but Senator Travis Hudson had put an appropriation for $5 million for Summer Haven Managed Retreat Project. It was supposed to be matching county funds for that. We've made calls over to the county to ask about the Summer Haven Managed Retreat Project, and they have no idea what we're talking about. So do you know where those funds, it's supposed to be to buy out properties there. Do you know
I've
what
seen
happened?
that too, but no, I don't. And I live around the North River by Matanzas Inlet, and
right.
there might be someone here that could answer that. I don't know.
Just wondering what happened to it.
Yeah, I understand there's several pots, but where they are, and yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Thank you.
Linda, the study that has just been completed but not released, is that correct?
Well, unless they go back to the drawing board and do some other things, but yes.
So you're saying that when they commissioned this study, that they left a certain category of what would happen if they left Summer Haven alone and didn't want to know what the impact would that be, or?
All the, every alternative they have, whether it's a seawall or revetment, my favorite, which is nearshore reefs, the different things to break up the wave action, renourishing the beach, all of those things have a cost. And then when it says the do nothing or no action, it says $0. And
So if it breached again, and then they just let it go, it would just fill all back up in.
well, not only that, but down at Marineland, I don't know if you've been down there, and this is still south of the river. There's a problem too in front of Summer Island, where it may not be as close to the ocean, but it's sand now. If you have a river in there moving the current and a breach happens, the river moves the current. If you have a flat beach there, the ocean's just going to roll right in. But I have serious concerns, and I mean, this is something for Flagler in St. Johns County, but down there, right at it's in St. Johns County, north of Marineland, the ocean is ready to hit the intercoastal. And once that happens, I don't know how, how do you fight that? I mean, does US 1 become A1A? And I'm talking, into the future, but who knows when a storm hits, what's going to happen there? They've been rebuilding the Marineland Dune every single time they're out there the next day. But yeah, there are serious potential consequences. You can fight the ocean, at the ocean, or you're going to have to fight it somewhere or lose everything. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing nothing. All right, government representative comments. We got a few of you here today.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Corey Seckard, City of St. Augustine. Wanted to give you a couple project status updates. Late last month, we wrapped up the Salt Run Dredging Project, and that's a project where the port, the city, and Find all work together in dredging maintaining the Salt Run channel. We removed approximately just over 10,000 cubic yards of spoil, and we're wrapping up. We submitted the invoice late last month to Elise, and to wrap up that project, the port funded us in just under $150,000 for that project. Additionally, we also wrapped up, concurrently, we wrapped up the Dolphin Drive Basin Entrance Dredging Project, which was just a city and port project, and we're waiting for the final invoicing on that so we could submit for reimbursement to the port also.
And what's the status with the breakwater dock?
So the status with the breakwater dock is we're currently, two delays on that right now. One delay is for permitting, and forgive me, it's either the port or the DEP, or not the port, the Army Corps we have in the DEP is we're waiting on, but that's in final review. And then the other piece of that is the contractor. They're experiencing some delays, and I believe we're hoping to mobilize at the end of this month to begin construction.
And just remind me, what is the projected time frame to complete?
Unfortunately, the projected time frame to complete is in November.
Okay, well, that's
Not too
not as
bad.
bad as it could be.
Where did the spoil material go for Salt Run?
I'm sorry, say again?
Where did the spoil material go for Salt Run?
So we're permitted to take it to the DMMA up at the Reed Island up north Jacksonville.
Got it.
Any other questions, sir?
Not
No.
related to what you had to say, but are you going to be here for the whole meeting?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, because there's a couple of things I wanted to ask about the city. I don't know if I should do it now or wait till the time comes.
You're welcome to now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
He's already out there.
Did you guys get the email from Elise that Bobby Thousand sent in about the no wake zone?
Yes.
Heard about it.
And in that email, he said that the city owned the bottom land there. Is that correct? Along Salt Run, if you come in from the inlet heading towards the conch house?
I would have to look at the overlay again, but yes, I believe that to be true.
Because I also spoke with Carl Blow about it, being able, if the city, because they owned it, could they put a no-wake zone from the jetties to the conch house? And he said that it would still have to go through the FWC. Is that correct?
To my belief, yes, that would be correct.
Well, I just wanted to be able to tell them that it's not as simple as just making it so. And I think that the reason is if everybody could put a no-wake sign up anywhere, you would, you'd never get on plane. It'd take you 6 weeks to get to Miami. But that strip is getting a lot more use at low tide, and I see boats just flying through there too. And then they have to go, when they get to the conch house, and they got to go no wake zone all the way to the lighthouse.
So I'm hoping to give an update next month on the status of what we're doing at Hospital Creek, because I know we're making some headway there, but I don't quite happen to have that information yet to present to the port then. But we can take a look at anything.
Okay.
Chris, was that in reference to Dr. Thousand's
Yes.
letter?
Yeah, Bobby
Okay.
Thousand, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say about that Florida statute says municipalities and counties may establish the following boat restricted areas by ordinance. Now, it doesn't say anything about anybody else.
So, yeah.
I mean, so if the county or the city of St. Augustine wanted to establish that as a no-wake zone, could they do it?
So the one thing I would want to look up before I give you an answer
Would you
is
talk a
whether or
little bit
not
louder for me?
that is whether or not that's a real, I don't want to say a real waterway, I'm not using the correct term, but I know the waterway coming in and out of the inlet is different than that of Salt Run. And I'd want to get you that information before I make a statement on that.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess if that question can be answered, then they would know what they would have to do.
Another project, look forward to it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Corey. Any other government representatives?
Good afternoon, Chris Passetti, St. Augustine Fire Department. Just wanted to give you a couple updates on our call volume. I've noticed I haven't been doing that in a little while. So this past month we ran 14 calls for service for the fire and the fireboat. One of them being locating Charlie, so that was an awesome joint effort with the Coast Guard, the FWC, Sheriff's Office, and everybody involved. So that was a pretty good win for us. And just want to let you know that I think every asset that we had was running like the Ray Marine stuff that you guys had purchased for us years ago, to be able to run those search patterns and to look for him at night through our FLIR camera and things like that. So that was a really successful thing. We had a few other saves with running kind of what we consider like a task force, like a joint operation vessel. So what we've been doing is putting like a fire asset with the Sheriff's Office and FWC or Coast Guard. That way, no matter what we come across in some of those busier weekends, we're able to handle it. So if it's a fire or medical related thing, then one of us can work it while they're operating the vessel and taking control of over the other vessel. If it's a police or an enforcement thing, then one of us can operate the vessel while they keep eyes on and do their thing. So it's been really successful. So
Congratulations on that rescue.
yeah, that was
I've got a couple of questions about that. I know when it first happened, that this kid was missing, my wife asked me, how could that happen? And I said, well, if tide's going out and he's anywhere near the inlet, and did he have a kicker on that boat, or was he?
He had like a little 4-horse.
And it quit, and he got
air-cooled.
sucked out the inlet, is that correct?
Yeah, so he was, normally he stays in the inlet is what the mom had told us. And he was just fishing right there at the corner where the rocks are in that deep little hole. And just a wave came out of nowhere. He was there around 4 a.m.
Oh, it swamped him before he got drug out into the inlet?
Correct. Yeah, he was right at the entrance to the inlet. And he got swamped there, overturned, and it pulled him out. He was able to get the boat righted, but again, that was like 4 a.m. He was able to get the boat started, the motor started again for a short period, like just a minute or two, and then he ended up ditching the motor because once it died completely,
I'm sorry, I thought it.
he realized he wasn't going to be able to stay afloat with the amount of water that was in the vessel itself.
One lucky kid right there.
Yeah, so we started out, the family was, adamant that he only stayed in Salt Run, he never went out anywhere else, and so we started that search, and I think we really inundated that area so we could rule it out, which then led us to moving to the offshore side of it, and fortunately the C-130 actually, he was such a small target, he was in an 8-foot John boat.
Oh my God.
And he was such a small target that they did not visually see him, they just pinged him on the radar. And once
The
it pinged
radar
him,
pinged his aluminum boat
Yeah.
2 foot under the water?
yeah, well, it was sort of floating.
Yeah.
There was just a little bit of the gunnel up
That's
around
how
the
they
side.
found him, with the radar?
Yeah, once it pinged him on the radar, they were able to loop around with the infrared and see him, and then call the boats over to scoop him up. But yeah, it was really fortunate. It was a great. Yeah, it was the very last leg of it. I can show you guys the picture of that later on. But
Good job, guys.
yeah, it was a great team effort. There were we did a little debrief with the Coast Guard yesterday, and Commander Barrow from Sector Jacksonville was talking about just how everyone played a role. FWC, which they're not here today, but they brought down one of their shallow water boats so we could get into every little mud flat and everything, back in the creeks and Salt Run, and so we were able to rule everything out in there and then move to the offshore. So it was great. But yeah, your products, boats, and things that you funded were a huge part of relieving more and more to get out offshore.
I was going to ask for a submarine next.
We're still drawing that up and getting some blueprints.
Yeah.
We don't want to ask ahead of time because costs are going up.
I do feel like we're getting buttered up.
Not at all. It's more of, I realized after this I've failed to bring a lot of the successes we have to you guys because I feel like you just assume we're out doing these things, and without us coming to tell you, how well they worked, I don't think you get that proper
Did
feedback.
he say how quickly he was out the inlet?
He said he was getting pulled out. Now, he was a surfer, local kid, good swimmer. Some of our firemen actually surf with him. And good swimmer. He said he tried to swim to shore, and he realized he was going to probably die trying to make it to
Back to
shore.
the boat?
He went back to the boat.
Wow.
But he didn't give a time frame, but he was out there pretty quick. So, yeah. But very fortunate.
Good job, guys.
Yep.
One of the things we're looking at as well from Aaron Braddock, St. John's County Sheriff's Office.
He just did.
I did.
Oh, did you? I didn't hear. I didn't hear.
Aaron Braddock, St. John's County Sheriff's Office. As we're looking at, so all the county parks and a lot of our buildings have various different camera setups. so that we can see the parks, see the ramps, see all those things, monitored through our intelligence department. We're looking at possibly getting a camera system, Lieutenant Underwood's looking into right now what kind of system we would need and what that would all entail to have something around or near the inlet that we could have monitoring that area. Do a couple different things as if we had another incident like this, it would be able to be viewed on the camera. We would see something in distress in the inlet. We got a lot of distresses in the shoals, north and south shoals coming in. We'd be able to put eyes on that before we had personnel there. We could see any kind of conditions that are going to have issues down the road, or if something is of issue, we can get out to it before it becomes an issue. And if we do have an overdue boater or anything like that, we can get what we consider pattern of life when they went out. So you could say, hey, they went out this way and then they went north, or they went out the inlet and went south. That's something the sheriff's office is actually looking into that stemmed from this incident. Just so y'all are aware that that's.
I bet he takes his first paycheck and goes and gets an E-perk from West
Yeah.
Marine.
Yeah, so, a bunch of course, you read things on Facebook and they're trashing the poor guy. One, he had done that like hundreds of times. Like he was pretty used to going out there, and just he had all the wrong things aligned at one time. So between that wave that capsized him, and he had flares, cell phone, life jacket, everything that he needed. But as soon as it capsized, that little
Oh,
boat,
he lost his
it was
phone.
gone. Yeah. So we captured the last ping of his phone, but it gives you a pretty big radius, not necessarily right where he's at, and so he wasn't really doing anything wrong. People trashed him, but he was fairly prudent for what he was doing.
Chris, I know several people at Porpoise Point that would be glad to have a camera on their houses. I mean, that's a perfect location, right out there at the inlet from one side to the other. And I'm sure that some of those private homes would allow you to put cameras up.
Okay. Yeah, that's something we can get Lieutenant Underwood to work with.
I was
So
out
we're
in
looking
the-
into.
I was out in the inlet, this has been several years ago, and they're kite surfing in there. And this one guy gets kind of tangled up, and he's trying to unfurl his kite, and the current is ripping out. And I said, "Do you need some help?" He goes, no, I'll be all right. I said, "I'll hang around." And I just kept circling him until he finally says, "Yeah, can you help me out?" And I pulled him in the boat, but
Yeah, we've been out there for several that were tangled up well enough that they couldn't swim anymore, and they were just kind of getting pulled out to sea. So the
dangerous
strings are
place.
pretty tight, so it's not like, oh, well, we just break it. But it's not a real option. So
Do you ever look on Facebook for Haulover Inlet? You guys ever seen that?
Yes,
Huh?
I have.
Jane, have you seen that? Look
I've
up
seen all kind of
Haulover
videos,
Haulover
YouTube.
Inlets in Miami
Okay.
and see what goes on in that inlet with people with boats getting capsized. I mean, it's a circus.
Qualified captain material?
Yeah, you should see it.
All you have to do is go to YouTube and put it Haulover.
Haulover,
And you'll
and
get
you'll
all
see
kind of videos. of
People getting thrown out of the boats 30 feet in the air. And
I think you would see a lot of that here too if we had a way, if people could walk out on our jetty like they could out there.
If it's a
There's
viewer.
not as much as goes on down there, but there's a good amount of it here as well.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of
We got our fair
shenanigans.
share of stupid?
yes, ma'am.
To continue on with what you were saying, as far as the cameras go,
Yeah,
the residential cameras, privately maintained and owned cameras. We actually, the sheriff's office, our intelligence unit has worked with a lot of homeowners up in the northwest and the northeast where we've had a lot of car burglaries and so forth, where they can give remote access just to our intelligence unit that doesn't go anywhere else other than our intelligence unit, which is secure, and we can essentially patch into those cameras to be able to see. So if you do know anybody, or if anybody is willing to do that, to give access to a camera, if they have a camera on a house or something of that nature in and around a
well, I've
body of
got
water.
several friends that live down there. I mean, I live there, but I don't live facing the inlet
Yes, sir.
like some people do. But I think I can get you some. Do you have a card or something? I could.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
They,
well, let me
so-
have one.
But yeah, our intelligence unit could probably work with them depending on what kind of camera they have and the system and all of that, but to do the remote access part, and that would help tremendously depending on where it's at. We use it in neighborhoods all the time for different crimes and so forth. depending on it, it could be any number of crimes, and it works, it helps significantly.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, fellas. No other government representatives here, I don't think. So that brings us to the Secretary Treasurer's report.
All right, as of, now, this is as of yesterday, the city police overtime, of the $8,000 that we committed, we've spent $66.44. Of the sheriff's department overtime, of the $25,000, we have spent $14,779. Derelict boats, we had a budget of $25,000, we've spent $4,339. Channel marker repairs of the $10,005, we've spent $94.70. And in the Florida State Board of Administration, we have $24,285. In the operating account, we have $670,868. And in the money market account, $1,116,888. For the tax year, we budgeted $716,620. We've received $716,809, which is an overage of $189. And we also received $974 from prior year's taxes.
What does it mean? What does that overage mean?
That means like, sometimes they have to pay a fee because they were late, you know.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So then, we get the money.
Gotcha.
We get it. We get a portion of it,
Right.
you know.
I think that automatically goes to the submarine fund.
I'll give you $189.
I thought we were gonna split it up among the commissioners.
Sounds like that C-130 was pretty effective. Maybe y'all could use one of those.
We could.
I have a question, unless, Matt, you still had questions?
Nope.
In previous treasurer's reports, you had a South State Reserve money market line
Yeah,
item.
that was if we had 1 million, we had $1.5 million, I think it was, and then we used $1.5 million.
But we're not going to
We're gonna
replenish?
redo it, but right now, there's not $1.5 million even in the money market account.
Right.
You can't take the money out of the money market account and put it towards a reserve when you don't have that $1.5 million.
What threshold would we need to get to
transfer the funds?
to put another $1.5 million in the in a reserve?
If the reserve is actually included in the money market.
Right.
So if you want to take out, well, you can't take out $1.5 million and move it to a reserve account because there is no $1.5 million.
Right. The reserve is conceptual anyway. It's not.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It is.
So-
And we use that immediately for, I forgot, well,
That was the Genevard
Genevard.
tract.
Yeah. So that was gone. That was diminished. And then, right now, there's $1,116,000 in there. So once the taxes start rolling, the income, the revenue from the taxes start rolling in, once it reaches 1.5, then I could put it into a reserve.
But I thought we had a discussion, because we set up that reserve for basically conservation purposes when I first came on board, and we needed to have a certain amount set aside for insurance, is what I thought.
Right.
But we were overfunded on the insurance side. I may be remembering this incorrectly.
I don't recall the insurance.
That's right. The insurance, I think what Commissioner West means by the insurance was that, and Carl Blow had talked to us about this in some detail, that we needed to keep at least a certain pot of money
Right.
available at all times in
Right.
case some catastrophe happened and the inlet got plugged up or something
So
like that.
what is that minimum, I guess, is what I'm asking.
He had told us it was in the $1 million to $1.5 million
Right.
range.
Right, so if you want to take the million, I don't know that,
So what had happened is we had $3+ million in the bank, or close to it. And so what we said is we wanted to kind of pre-commit some money to projects that would have a a positive impact on waterway access that also had some sort of conservation valence.
Right.
So we had a big chunk of money that we set aside, and then we, also had $1.5 million, $2 million in the bank that was just not set aside. That was sort of our general operating funds. We spent that $1.5 million because that project came up.
Right.
So now we're down to just below $2 million, which is total, yes, exactly, which means that we have a little bit more than we would need for that insurance, but we don't have enough right now, I don't think, to
Well, you could
replenish that reserve for another big project, although we'll get there soon enough. Clay, Clay wanted to...
Yeah, just a little extra input. The reason I had that handy was just because trim season was coming up, and because that resolution was done in February of 21, given the inflation, I thought just for informational purposes, I was going to let the commission know that if you adjusted the 1.5 million figure as of February 16, 2021 to today's dollars under the Consumer Price Index, as of July 31 of 2023, the equivalent purchasing value dollars would equate to $1,743,391.99. And when the 1.5 million figure was arrived at originally back in 2021, it was best guesstimate amongst commissioners and Carl Blow's input of what past expenditures have been. So it wasn't a scientific number, but to the extent the commission was comfortable with 1.5 million as of February 16, 2021, today's dollars, that number equals $1,743,391.99. It's a resolution, it still exists. You're free to revise that resolution, come up with a different resolution, a different number, but just for background informational purposes, because trim was coming up, I thought I would have that handy.
Right. That's good info. Thank you, Clay.
Matt, as I recall, we kind of, after speaking with Carl Blow and stuff, because even when I first got on the board, there was talk about what we needed in reserve for the inlet in case something happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we, I think we came to the conclusion it's somewhere around $1 million for the inlet. So I guess if we want to get to the $1.5 million, we just have to wait and then sock it away. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's socked away now. I won't
Right, but
vote to send any money out of that, but to.
Only because of all the projects we already
our funding.
are funding and we haven't been invoiced for yet and haven't paid for yet.
Right.
So that money in the operating account is going to go way down.
Right.
Which means that, because there is no more income coming in until November.
Okay.
So that's it, we're done. So
Okay, I guess my question stems from eliminating that line item on the treasurer's report.
I could put it back in the.
I would put it back just as a reminder, a placeholder for all of our collective memories that we're supposed to fund that once we are able to,
Right,
once
so
again.
I could just put it with no number next to it.
Right,
Just
right.
put the line item back on.
That
we
that
need
would
to
just be
replenish
my
it.
preference, so we don't forget about that intent of the board.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. Good. Does anybody have any other comments or questions about the Secretary Treasurer's report? Hearing nothing. Next is approval of minutes. I was not at this meeting. Jane, you were not at this meeting, so neither of us can participate in this discussion, but does anybody have any
Well, there's, in
modifications?
the minutes, there's one minor change. At the very end, it says something about, I brought up about derelict boats at West Palm Beach or Palm Beach, but it was actually Key West. Key West, just change that.
I will change that.
There's
Other
nothing
than
big.
that, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
So a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Tom.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Great. Next is engineering report.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Ginn stole most of my thunder when it comes to the county's report. It was released last week. I have been through a portion of it, not the entire thing. I will say that the engineering analyses that are presented in it appear to be pretty solid. They looked at an initial screening of a seawall, a revetment, a dune restoration, a beach and dune nourishment, T-head groins, breakwaters, artificial reefs, and structural dune cores, and then whittled that down to a smaller subset that included seawall and beach and dune nourishment, and developed costs for that. And then the non-engineering alternatives were managed retreat, which they put a dollar amount on, as well as the no action, which I share Mrs. Ginn's concerns about not putting some kind of dollar amount. They actually, in the report itself, on multiple occasions, admit that there are costs, but they just didn't put anything with it. So beyond the scope of this report, I guess, is what the reasoning was. But that would still raise concerns for me. It just depends on what the use of the report is. If it's going to be for ultimate decision-making purposes on the behalf of the county commission, I think it behooves them to go back and reevaluate what that doing nothing actually is going to cost. But
What was the dollar figure attributable to the managed retreat option?
managed retreat?
I want to say it was
I'd have to go back in.
$3.5 million or something like that, right? Is that? Yeah, there you go. Just for some property purchase along the beachfront, I think, right?
Right.
Managed retreat works out to $3.13 million.
There you go.
And is Intera a coastal engineering firm?
Yes, it's actually Intera and GEC, a combined joint venture that the county selected for this. So, Mike Trudnick, who used to work for us, works for Intera now, and I believe he was the lead guy on the report. So
Interesting.
that's all I have as far as a report.
Okay. Any questions on that? No additional questions? Great, no old business, so that brings us to new business. Item A, discussion of a rubric for funding new projects, all commissioners. But Commissioner West, I believe you raised this one, right?
Yeah. So for the sake of consistency, I thought it might be helpful if we had some guidelines for how we go about the decision-making process for funding projects that come before us. What is, for example, the return on investment? We just heard from Chief Passetti about the benefits of some of the equipment that we've paid for in this latest rescue operation. I think it would be good to have some sort of evaluating criteria, some guidelines to help the commissioners make a decision on whether or not we should fund something, instead of it being a willy-nilly, like, oh, that sounds like a good idea, let's do it. Because it does seem quite arbitrary to me. That's just my personal experience over the last several years. I don't feel like we have really good guidelines. Most of the projects are coming from law enforcement, and they're for the purposes of funding equipment. And I would say we almost 100% of the time fund those projects, usually at the cost being sought. And I don't see that changing, but I think we should have some guidelines. So that, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And before I spend a whole bunch of time putting together guidelines on paper, I wanted to at least have that discussion with my fellow commissioners to see what you guys think.
Is that something that would be incorporated into the funding application?
I would think so. That would be the most natural place.
Right.
But I think we should also have that funding application and those questions before us when we are making decisions on whether or not to fund a project.
Should it maybe be in different categories?
Yeah.
Where you say, if you're coming here and it's law enforcement, or, they just have different categories on how we would address it.
Right.
Like what's fluff and what's needs to be done,
Right. Like, remember we had that proposal to buy reusable water bottles for teenagers that live in Nocatee, which is outside of our jurisdiction. I'm like,
Right.
well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I didn't want to spend time drafting guidelines if there wasn't kind of some consensus that might be a helpful exercise. And then I would like just feedback on what you guys think what should those guidelines entail?
I don't see anything wrong with it. The only thing I would just be careful of is that we just don't handcuff ourselves to where, if these are guidelines, and then we can still
Right.
deviate, but,
Right.
it's kind of like when you go to the planning and zoning board, and somebody wants to get something changed, and they say, well, it violates the zoning. So I know, but that's why the planning and zoning board is here. If he's gonna refer back to the
I
planning
feel
and
like you're
zoning
talking to
board-
me, Chris.
Huh?
I feel like you're talking to me right now.
No, you know, no, I'm just saying, you're supposed to look at stuff. You know?
Right.
If you just wanna go by the planning and zoning board's laws, then you don't need a commission, right?
This is true.
Mr. Chairman, my idea is that we don't really need this. I certainly will not vote for it because I don't know if you're expecting to vote today, but I know
Well,
that.
I wanted to talk
Okay,
about it.
But there has to be some hard armoring just to save our beaches.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
Tom,
we're
we're
not
still
talking
on,
about that yet.
we're still on item A right now.
Yeah,
But now you know where I stand on that. so-
this is,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is the,
I apologize.
Just a fun, that's all right.
I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to look at an actual rubric. The one thing that has felt problematic to me over the last few years is that occasionally we've been asked to fund projects that clearly have more benefit for the community at large than they do for citizens specifically within the Port District. And I know that that's sometimes because we are a funder of last resort for these types of projects, but I would like to see a funding rubric that incorporated a pretty hard limit on what we're willing to consider if a project's primary beneficiaries are going to be outside of the district rather than in our district,
Yeah, good point.
personally.
You could even discuss whether it's tangible, or is it gonna be, well, I'll give you an example, like funding the Nights of Lights. We fund it, it goes away, the next day there's not a boat ramp you can point to, or,
Right.
so maybe there's like tangible and intangible.
Right.
But anyway, that's,
Good. So maybe it would make sense then for all of us to think about possible categories or criteria and maybe send them to Elise to compile and send to Jane. Is that
Yeah, that would be.
is that a workable?
If you guys could maybe get those to me by the 1st of September so I can have some time to gather up your ideas and put it into a document for further discussion at the next meeting.
And all I want to say is I'll be out of town from August 28th to the 6th, so.
Okay, so September
it has
6th
to
then.
be within- Before, I'm leaving and to cooler weather, so.
nice.
Nice.
Just if I could, I would suggest perhaps each commissioner bring their ideas to the next meeting.
To the meeting. Okay.
So, because it's getting kind of close to the line between informational and
Discussion,
decision-making.
yeah, okay.
And I don't anticipate there being any big funding requests between now and then.
Yeah,
that this could be
no rush
incorporated
on this
into.
at all. It was just a
Okay.
idea.
So that's an action item for everyone here then for the next meeting. If you have ideas for a funding rubric, any categories or concerns, bring them in.
Cool. Thanks.
Great. Any other discussion on that? Hearing nothing, that brings us to item 12B, consideration of a resolution against hard armoring within the port's jurisdiction boundaries on the Atlantic Ocean front. Commissioner West, this was also your item?
Yeah. So I have shared with each of you kind of a very, very rough draft. Basically, a resolution supporting living shorelines and discouraging hard armoring of coastal shorelines. And I want to make the point, Commissioner Rivers, that, we're not a regulatory agency here. So we have like zero power to say no to any permit application for a seawall, geotube, jetty, you name it. We have zero say in that game. However, I do think it's important that we emphasize the necessity for having living shorelines over hard armoring, which actually only exacerbates erosion. I'm sure Taylor Engineering can talk about this until they're blue in the face. And that is simply what this resolution does. It's supportive of living shorelines and discourages hard armoring. And really the only, so to speak, teeth that would be part of this resolution, as you can see in the last paragraph, that property owners or agencies that are going to be seeking permitting and construction of hard armoring or of shorelines, which they're welcome to do with all the other agencies that issue those permits, like DEP, like the Corps, like the county. They can go ahead and do that all they want, but they can't seek funding from the port. from taxpayer dollars to have those hard armoring measures put in on their property.
Now, would that be in any waterway within the port's jurisdiction or only on the Atlantic Ocean front?
Only on the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting.
So is this up for discussion at a future meeting? We just saw this.
Yeah, it's just, on the agenda is just consideration.
Okay.
So, and again, this is a rough draft, but I took the initiative to just kind of putting some thoughts on paper so you guys could at least get an idea of what I was talking about. And I'll proceed with a more final, fine-tuned draft if there's consensus among my fellow commissioners that this is a good direction to go in. Again, we aren't in a position to deny a permit, but we can hold the purse strings on bad projects.
Right.
What, on the Atlantic Ocean, how often has the port been ever involved in anything that is directly on the Atlantic that I can think of?
Well, the point here is not that we would be involved with any project in the Atlantic, but so for instance, am I right on this, that if, the county decided to build a seawall down at Summerhaven rather than dune restoration, then, we would express our disapproval of them exercising that option by no longer being willing to fund some category projects that they come to us asking for money for. Obviously, we can't stop that project, but we could at least
There might be instances where we'll be asked to share funding, and that would cut us off from doing that as well to protect the beaches. So I'm not in favor of this, and I will vote no on it, but I'll wait until we have a vote. But along those lines, let me ask one more thing. If we could put something on the agenda for next meeting, and that would be to possibly recommend to counties, or to our county, or to the city of St. Augustine, that we as a board would support a no-wake zone in that area described by Chris Way. So we don't have the right to do the no-wake zone, but we can, like Jane was talking about, we could have an influence on recommending to the county or the city for a no-wake zone in that particular area. And one thing we need to do, and I mean, Chris, you may be good to do this, is to come back with a definition. Where exactly would this line be?
They wanted to go from the jetties and that long run along State Park until you hit the no-wake zone in the Conch House.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Back to the agenda item at hand. I think what we need now is a vote on continuing this, or
whether to move forward. Because I don't want to waste my time if we don't have consensus to move forward.
My only thing is about anything like this, and if this draft said that we would support, and we were pledging that we would support any hardening, I would be opposed to that as well. I don't know why we would handcuff ourselves if we don't think it's a good idea to fund a project, and they can, like I said, we have no control over it, but we can certainly take it whenever somebody comes before us about it. I just don't like the idea of just being handcuffed, which that's my only concern about something like that. But by all means, Jane, if you want to continue and see what we come up with, I'm not opposed to looking at anything. I just don't really like the idea of just blanket saying, okay, we're just never ever going to do this as part of the
potentially work in an exception. Potentially work in an
exception.
exception.
I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, we don't have any control over it. But just to say that we're just absolutely not going to fund it. I mean, what if damage comes to the inlet possibly on either side, and it needs more riprap there or whatever, that all the granite that's there now, we're just going to say nope. I don't know.
Well, look at that huge property we put $1.5 million into. If something happens along the waterway there.
This would be for the Atlantic coastline.
Yeah,
it's only for the beach.
Yeah, only on the ocean side is what she's saying, Tom.
Oh, only on the ocean side?
Yes.
Yeah, just no hard armor on the Atlantic coast itself.
No seawalls on the coast.
No seawalls on the beach, basically. No seawalls or bulkheads on the
I
beach.
don't think we can, like we see, we can't prevent it, but I don't think we ought to discourage anybody from putting a seawall up. That's the only way they can save their homes.
Well, I don't think it would even apply to a residential. No resident can come here and say, hey, I want to build a seawall, can I get some money from you guys?
I don't know, Jane, would it apply to residentials?
I don't believe there's ever been an individual property owner. Now, the Dolphin Drive, that wasn't on the Atlantic coast, but that was a group of individuals who wanted Dolphin Drive dredged, and we did pay for that.
Right.
But I'm not aware of any individual oceanfront owner that's ever come to the port for funds.
If they did,
Right.
you came to the wrong place.
Exactly.
I personally am in favor of this. One thing that is concerning to me as an attorney is that it seems to be written in a way that would make it completely perpetual, right? We will just never, ever fund anything in all perpetuity. We may need to have a bit looser, a
Flexibility.
relief valve there, yeah, maybe for a period of some years or something like that. Although I don't know how tightly we could even bind, we
Bind
do have
future
elections
boards,
every
right.
2 years, so
Correct.
that might be the
This can
absolute
be
ceiling.
undone after the next commission.
Right.
So.
So any other discussion on that, Linda? Anything? No. Okay. Good. Well, that is it for new business. That brings us back to public comment.
Nicholas Binder, 232 Big Magnolia Court, St. Augustine Beach, Florida. First, let me thank you for the 5 minutes you give speakers. We used to get more time at the City of St. Augustine Beach meetings, but they cut it back because people were saying nothing for 3 to 5 minutes. It goes back 5 years ago, so thank you. Last month, you had a presentation from the City of St. Augustine Beach dealing with additional funds for dune restoration and walkovers. To update you, and I attend a lot of meetings for the City of St. Augustine Beach, at the July, and that was at July 18th meeting you had, at the July 31st meeting for the City of St. Augustine Beach, I brought up a need to provide funding for Ocean Hammock Park for the restoration. It was built in 2008 and 2009. It's 15 years. They spent an extra $70,000 in doing the Trek boardwalk through it, but they did the conventional 2x6s and different types of woods that have seen their age. The city originally had in their budget $25,000. They decided through discussions, and it's not finalized yet, to remove $15,000 and have only $5,000 for some basic maintenance and $5,000 into an engineering study to see what needed to be done. My understanding is when they brought an engineer in, the $5,000 became closer to $15,000. My point is, also at the August 7th meeting, the Army Corps Engineers came to the City of St. Augustine Beach in the beach replenishment. Their schedule now is around November 1st to start the replenishing and be done somewhere around June of '24. So when the City of St. Augustine Beach is requesting money for additional walkovers, it's a great concept, but they may not be in a position to do new walkovers. I would prefer that they use their money to help rehabilitate in matching funds through you, Ocean Hammock Park. That's a quarter of a mile, built again in 2008 and 2009. It has seen its wear and tear, but it's in good shape. My understanding is the pilings are in real good shape. They may need some cross members underneath the boardwalk. The side railings haven't been touched in 15 years. So I would encourage you, when you deal with the City of St. Augustine Beach, please consider some matching funds for Ocean Hammock Park. We had over 5,600 people sign the petitions supporting the continuance of Ocean Hammock Park. That's been a real struggle, as I mentioned over the last year and others have mentioned, with Sea Colony. And right now it's still there. And the City of St. Augustine Beach has asked the Florida agency to keep the park passive and not build extra things in it. They are finishing the bathrooms. They should be finished by September, hopefully. And they'll open up the parking lot again, which would be about 20-some spaces. But again, the park and the walkway need some maintenance work for matching funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ken Manning, 246 Barataria Drive in Summer Haven. I want to comment on some of the discussions that I've heard today about the armoring of the coastline. I am in full agreement with you that we should take all steps to protect our environment, to protect the waterways and protect the marine life and fowl that are associated with the environment that we live in. I live on Matanzas Inlet, and I enjoy that environment every day. However, I do believe there may be some concerns with regard to a carte blanche, as Commissioner Ray said, a carte blanche kind of approach to no armaments whatsoever, because it's been shown that sometimes those armaments actually do save the environment. And what we're finding right now with the Summerhaven River is that pristine marine ecosystem in that river has been destroyed because there is no protection for that river. We've seen breach after breach because the ocean is exposed in that location. Now, we've also seen the opposite occur, whereas on the north end of the Summerhaven River, near the mouth of the inlet, there is a revetment in Summerhaven, and it has done wonders to preserve that community and the people that live there, the homeowners, and the general beauty of Summerhaven and its historical value to this community. I also think that perhaps a carte blanche approach to this would be probably not in alignment with the report that comes back from Interra. Interra has stated that they have multiple options to consider for repairing the Summerhaven River and getting it flowing again so that we can return to that pristine marine estuary that it once was. One of those options very well may be to consider some sort of protective armament, whether that be on the ocean side or on the west side of the dune. That would be the east shoreline of the Summerhaven River, remains to be seen. Another option that's being considered is not just armament of the shoreline, but also slightly offshore breakwater improvements that would disperse the wave action. So to take an approach that says there's no way that we can support any armamentation of our shoreline, especially in that community where it is already shown to have worked, may put the community and that pristine ecosystem in more jeopardy. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Oh.
Regarding Chris Passetti, St. Augustine Fire Department. Regarding the rubric you were referring to, myself, Josh Underwood does it a lot, Lieutenant Underwood, with the Coast Guard. I don't know if you've spoken to him at all.
No,
but the Port Security Grant does a very similar thing, and they have a committee that sits before it goes to the captain of the port, and they rank all of the items, so it's kind of like a third-party group that ranks them. But I know they have a rubric that's already set up.
Okay.
And it may not be exactly what you're looking for, but instead of recreating the wheel, it may be something to look into.
Yeah, that's a great point. Find definitely has a rubric for their grants as well, so it'd be worth talking to Carl and seeing if he could share some of that.
Port security one, like they rank it, and then they give it to the captain of the port, and he goes through and adjusts or scratches out whatever he wants, but at least that way it's kind of, done
So
on the
if I were
side.
to contact Sergeant Underwood, I would ask for the ranking for what exactly?
Port security grant.
Port security grants.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Carl may have that as well, Jane.
All right.
Right.
As well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. That brings us to comments by commissioners. Tom?
No, only if you're out on your boat, take a look at my new bulkhead, which is my problem. Need to have my property armored.
I'm meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock with the county concerning the Genoa project. And I don't know if everybody was aware, but Matt appointed me to be the go-between. So I'm going to be at that meeting tomorrow with the county on Mizell Road at 2 o'clock, if anybody's interested in comment. But I think they're going to start laying out what their ideas are.
I don't think any of us can come. Yeah, no, I mean,
would be a
literally, like, it'd be a
sunshine
sunshine law violation.
violation.
That's entrapment, Chris. Good try.
I'm going to get that chairmanship one way or the other.
Could be there so long as you were not communicating.
Right, did not communicate with each other, that's right.
Yeah, well, I'll be there.
Okay, good, well, yeah, please report back. Corey, I wanted to ask, I spoke with some folks, I've been attending the Guantanamo Management Advisory Group meetings every quarter, and most recently, the folks out at the GTM, I think, have been talking with the city about putting in a tide gauge at the marina. Have you heard anything about that, or do you know anything about that?
No, I don't, but I'll inquire.
Okay.
Get back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Jane?
No, I hogged up enough of the agenda. Thanks.
Linda?
I just think the rubric is a really good idea, to have a guidance, and it would be something that we could give before when someone's looking on the website and they want to know what's our criteria for approving or not approving.
Yeah, which I don't even know.
Or, well, it's important that we know and
Yes.
they know.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Good. All right. Well, there being no other business, our next meeting will be on September the 19th. Have I got that right?
No.
Oh, no, because it's a trim meeting, so it's special,
So you're
right?
going to have, the next meeting is going to be a week early, so it's going to be September 14th.
Thursday, September 14th. Okay.
And that's
Yeah,
trim?
Thursday.
A normal meeting followed by the first public trim hearing,
Meeting,
right?
And at 5:05 is the
Right.
first public hearing.
Yeah, so 2 meetings.
September 14th?
September
Yeah.
14th.
Okay.
All right. Okay, there being no other business, this meeting's adjourned.